Other countries like Somalia have said they're willing to resolve the problem in order to get the ban lifted. African leaders have been calling for stronger trade partnerships within the continent in order to develop their economies and reduce their reliance on foreign assistance from the U.S. and other Western countries. Chris Sochamringa, Scripps News, Kinshasa.
President Donald Trump touted his, quote, big, beautiful bill he's pushing Congress to support while underscoring support for police in his agenda. Trump pointed to actions aimed at officer protection, more stringent immigration policies, and the bill containing funding, including for border priorities.
I would say, without question, in the history of America, I don't think anybody's been more for the police than I am.
The president of the Fraternal Order of Police offering praise for the bill, particularly efforts for no tax on overtime, as law enforcement noted their challenges with recruitment and retention.
You know, law enforcement officers, we find ourselves in a very difficult position where we're having a serious problem with recruiting and retention, as you pointed out. So you, in a recruiting and retention standpoint, you show appreciation for what we do, recognize what we do in the community, and I want you to know that we're proud to support the bill. This is something that needs to be happening. A promise that you made, and we appreciate you carrying through with it.
Trump said he thought the bill was, quote, moving along nicely, but did not address the back and forth that played out on social media between him and Elon Musk over it. Haley Bull, Scripps News Group, Washington.
The bodies of 2 Israeli-American hostages are finally coming home more than 20 months after they were taken by Hamas. The Israeli military says it was able to recover the bodies of 70-year-old Judy Weinstein Haggai and 72-year-old Gadi Haggai during a joint military operation. The couple was killed near their home during the October 7, 2023 attack, and their bodies
2023, Burns fatally stabbed and killed a 60-year-old woman in a parking lot in Roseville and later attacked another woman at a bus stop in St. Clair Shores. He now faces life in prison without parole.
A family-owned business in Inkster is asking for your help tonight in finding a woman they say stole from their 2-year-old baby girl.
Take a look at this. This is the woman who allegedly came into Cannon's $99 suits and stole a phone right from that little girl's hands.
7 News Detroit reporter Tiara Braddock spoke to the owners today and tells us why they say it is so very important for them to get that phone back.
Cannon's $99 suits has been around in the Inkster community for more than 50 years. And the owner tells me this is the first time in all those years someone has taken something from the store.
What happened was unfortunate, uncalled for, and unnecessary.
Christian Cannon and his father own Cannon's $99 suits on Inkster Road. He says about 2 weeks ago, a woman came in the store trying to sell clothes. As she was leaving, he says she stole an iPhone right out of the hands of his 2-year-old daughter. His daughter was watching cartoons on the phone.
And to steal an iPhone from a 2-year-old baby is foul.
Christian shared surveillance video from inside the store that shows the moment he says the woman took the phone. He also shared this picture from outside that shows what car she was driving. It's a red sedan with a white hood.
What occurred here in our store, it can happen anywhere.
Christian reported the stolen phone to Inkster police. The phone belonged to his wife, LaShani Cannon, who says she really needs the phone back.
I have all my important documents, information there. So that's all I need. My information is in the phone.
LaShani says they have never seen this woman in the store.
We were not expecting her at all to do such thing.
And Christian has this message for the woman who allegedly stole the phone.
It is unfortunate what you did to us. You caused our family a lot of frustration, a lot of anger.
There is a $500 reward being offered for any information that leads to this woman's arrest. If you know anything, you can contact Inkster Police. You can find their information.
Construction site at Latson Road south of Grand River in Genoa Township today. They say a boom spreader from a concrete truck hit a power line, causing it to fall, shocking 2 workers. Those workers were taken to the hospital. The incident was turned over to the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
An investigation is underway tonight after a bomb threat on a Spirit Airlines flight forced passengers off the plane at Detroit Metro Airport. The Wayne County Airport Authority telling us that police met the flight before it departed this morning. As a precaution, passengers had to be re-screened back at the terminal while law enforcement cleared the plane. Spirit releasing a statement saying in part, quote, "The safety of our guests and team members is our top priority, and we are working to get our guests to their destination as soon as possible."
Hot. Hey, boy. It's
okay. Journey of what this could grow and become.
Now, YouTube's algorithm can make or break a creator's future. Take us inside the black box, just a little. How does it work and why does it change all the time?
Well, the simplest way to think about the recommendations that you see in your feed, whether it's the home feed or on the watch page, is it is really a reflection of your interests as a viewer. And so when it's changing in the sense of reflecting back your interests or your personalized history of what you are watching on our platform. And that is the simplest way that I can really describe.
So it's our fault the algorithm keeps changing.
Well, because our interest as viewers continues to change. Now, obviously,
this was all designed to exactly mirror Christianity, and the founder of Juche actually was a defector, so we have a lot of detail on it.
And Jeff, when people flee North Korea seeking freedom, many of them end up crossing the Yalu River into China, and often they seek out buildings with crosses attached, churches, because they've been told that people there will help them. What will a closer South Korea-China relationship mean for them, and how difficult will it be for them to make their way into South Korea, and do you expect South Korea will accept them or send them packing?
Yeah, what a great question. We've seen this before, unfortunately. So this isn't the first time that a candidate with money and influence from China or North Korea has been elected. So they will definitely say we're gonna focus more on dialogue with North Korea. Dialogue just means we're gonna not put any pressure on them and let them do whatever they want. And with those defectors, they'll probably put a lot of scrutiny on that and shut it down.
This year, we brought you a story from Ruby Major Elementary. The music teacher, Mr. K, recorded the kids singing Jelly Roll's I'm Not Okay. It was a gift for the students and staff at Antioch High School following the school shooting earlier this year. Well, Jelly Roll heard all about it and invited the students to sing with him at the Opry tonight.
I've always said I want my kids to have a world-class musical experience, and what can you do beyond? I mean, there's a lot we can do beyond this, but this is certainly a huge brick in that house of awesome world-class musical experiences.
I would say, and they should have just wrapped up that performance not too long ago. Our Amanda Roberts saw the kiddos off on their rehearsal this afternoon. She will have the full story of their Opry debut tomorrow on News Channel 5. I can't wait. Coming up, one of President Trump's biggest supporters is now one of his loudest critics. What sparked a fiery feud between Trump and Elon Musk.
Quiet overnight, but a chance of storms Friday and Saturday, prompting a Storm 5 alert. Threats and timing in your forecast up next.
Getting ready for CMA Fest is just easier with News Channel 5 this morning.
Welcome all y'all.
Team coverage continues Friday morning.
And that is having a good center or a veteran center in front of a young quarterback takes so much pressure off of a young quarterback. And I think we might end up talking about it later for another team in this division. But you don't want to have your rookie quarterback, your young quarterback, doing everything to start off. And that's one of the biggest things I learned last season watching the Commanders, watching the Broncos. You don't want to ask these guys to do the Masters level stuff right away because the windows are so much quicker in the NFL. Those things happen so much faster. Get them.
Jack. He has an emotional one tonight. Powerful story. And if it holds, I think we're going to lead with it tonight unless something happens. But just a little backstory on this. Castlemont high school teacher was recently killed. Him and his partner walking down the street in Oakland, having a great evening, 7:30, and then a driver slams into him. A couple minutes earlier, the driver was being pursued by officers. The pursuit was called off. They were hit. The teacher at Castlemont dies. Partner survives, severely injured. So John sits down with Nina tonight, and we hear from her for the first time. And just a couple of the words. I feel really weird about surviving. I have mixed emotions. He saved my life, speaking about Marvin. We had planned for a future. So it'll be an emotional interview, and
fact that it creates a moratorium on any state or local regulation of artificial intelligence for the next 10 years. The reason that exists is so that there can be prevention of monopolies in the space. This is not about unleashing regulations or removing or preventing regulations on major corporations. It's about ensuring that major corporations like Google and Palantir or others, Northern Gunthrop and Lockheed Martin, whatever, all these major technology companies can't lobby for regulations that ensure that no small businesses can come up in the space and compete with them. We know that traditionally speaking, the most regulated industries are those industries which are regulated by the companies that are leading in those industries.
Welcome back. I'm Austin Westfall. Elon Musk now turning the chainsaw on the White House. President Trump and Musk spent the day torching each other on social media, and a lot of it had to do with President Trump's big, beautiful bill in Congress. Why? Let's ask tax, economic, and political expert Sandra Swirsky. She's the founder and CEO of Integer, as always. Good to have you on. How did this bill help to, in part, fuel the big, beautiful breakup that we've been watching today? What does this have to do with the bill?
Sure. So I think a couple of things. First is that I believe Musk believes he spent a lot of time trying to bring the deficit down by slashing and burning a lot of the programs in the federal government. And he's taken a look at this bill and some of the projections and sees that the bill is going to increase the deficit as opposed to decrease it. And he views it, I suspect, as undermining what he was trying to do in the federal government.
And that's going to be something that we're going to be talking about for quite some time, is what exactly has led to this feud. One of the big questions about the bill itself, though, I want to make sure we stay on topic here, is... And this is going to be a tough question to answer at this point, live look at Capitol Hill, where they're going to be working on this bill for quite some time. My question is, does this bill cut the deficit or not? The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says the bill will spike deficits by $2.4 trillion over the decade. But some GOP members argue that spending cuts are going to be enough to make up for that. Is it possible to know who's correct yet?
It's not possible to know. There's, as you noted, that there are two schools of thought. The tax
County. These will be fizzling out over the next couple of hours as the sun gets lower. These storms will lose some of their energy, but the moisture is going to linger into tomorrow, so we see more chances for storms, especially south of Tahoe tomorrow afternoon. Some heavy rain right now just to the south of Reno, some lightning as well. Truckee, Tahoe City, over into Incline Village in the clear for now. Also watching a little bit of lightning and a quick downpour there in central Alpine County, and some heavier rain, maybe even some small hail into northern Mono County as well. I mentioned there's a benefit to the rain, and of course, else. It's the fuels. Those have been getting drier and drier, even in the Sierra. We haven't had any snow at 6,000 feet. It's around lake level in Tahoe for several weeks now. We still have some snow melting in the higher elevations, of course, but if you're in the foothills and the valley, coastal hills, you know just how dry those grasses have been. So I was curious. I went back and looked. What's the last time we've had, we'll call it impactful rain in the area? A tenth of an inch of rain or more, enough to kind of wet the roads. Well, for Sacramento, at least at Executive Airport, it was the end of March. It's now been 67 days. For Modesto, late April, we had some thunderstorms come through there. Oroville, about a month ago, mid-May. And for Blue Canyon, also about a month ago. South Lake Tahoe, I had most recently seen a tenth of an inch of rain back in May, but I have a feeling today's storms in the area likely producing a little bit more. So again, good to get some moisture into the fuels there, into the Sierra.
Choices.
If it wasn't for little Artie, we would have split up years ago.
Truth is, we just can't stand each other. So this lockdown, being in the same house together, me and him.
The only thing that makes living with her even remotely bearable is knowing that I get to leave this house every day.
I feel exactly the same. We're all in this together, guys. We'll get through it.
Oh my God, I'm learning how to play the banjo. Look at me.
Between the president and Elon Musk, all things seeming very sour now, as well as the promise that had existed at some point of $7,500 in tax credits for those who bought electric vehicles. Now, that was supposed to be part of President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill. It has now been confirmed that it's not going to be included. And as a result, we're seeing Tesla's already struggling, continuing to struggle more. Of course, it has had weak sales. It's taken a real reputational hit as a result of this bromance. And in fact, its robo-taxis area, the self-driving robo-taxis, not taking off quite as fast as had been promised. We're seeing similar responses here amongst electric vehicle makers in Asia. BYD currently down about 0.5%. Paring back some of the losses that we saw at the open, it was down about 2% at the open. The other company to mention, of course, is SpaceX. Now, we had seen billions of dollars in government contracts, in the order of $22 billion, according to the chief operating officer, partly to fund some of the ferrying that occurs of astronauts, NASA astronauts to the International Space Station. We heard from President Trump saying that he was going to terminate some of this funding. As a result, Elon Musk said that he was going to decommission the Dragon, has since stepped back on this. But there have been calls from all unlikely places, the likes, for example, of Steve Bannon, who was speaking on his podcast earlier, suggesting that we should see, quote unquote, that the White House should seize SpaceX tonight before midnight, and calling Elon Musk a know-it-all.
Okay, Katie Silver bringing us that update from the Singapore newsroom. Many thanks. Well, aside from Chinese EV stocks, Asian markets are mostly rising after President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed to resume trade talks during a highly anticipated phone call. According to China's state media, Xi told Trump that Beijing had stuck to its end of the tariff deal. Thursday's call is the first time the two leaders have spoken since Trump launched a trade war with Beijing in February.
We had a very good talk. And we've straightened out any complexity. It's very complex stuff, and we straightened it out. The agreement was we're going to have Scott and Howard and Jameson will be going and meeting with their top people and continue it forward. But no, I think we have everything. I think we're in very good shape with China and the trade deal.
Well, former U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai, who served in the Biden administration, told us about the significance of the phone call.
I think, as with everything in this administration, on trade in particular, because that's my area, you've got to recognize the performance that's happening in front of the screens, and then you have to then drill down to what the substance is. So I think that this phone call was an important development in the ongoing drama and in the performance. It's still not really clear to me, though, what the purpose of the confrontation with China on trade is. That doesn't mean that there aren't many purposes that could be there. To be very frank, there are significant challenges that the United States and China have to face in their trade and economic relationship. But coming from this administration, it still remains largely unclear to me what the specific challenge or challenges are that this administration is prioritizing.
That's all for now. Thanks for watching.
Hello there. It stays very unsettled weather-wise for the rest of this week. So showers, longer spells of rain at times, windy too for some, and temperatures are below the seasonal average. Friday, a day of sunny spells and some scattered showers. It's drier and brighter across the southern half of the UK than it was on Thursday. Still some rain to start the morning, mostly across northern England. That sweeps its way eastwards, a good scattering of showers developing behind most of the showers across the northern half of the UK, although there could be some lines of showers forming towards the south coast as well, but generally drier and a bit brighter here. Some of the showers heavy and thundery across northeast Scotland. Temperatures a little below the average, 14 to 19 degrees. Now, on Saturday, there is an area of low pressure sweeping eastwards, bringing unusually strong winds for the time of year, particularly towards Channel Coast, where we could be looking at coastal gales perhaps. There'll be some heavy thundery showers too, working their way further eastwards throughout the day. There could be some very heavy, slow-moving downpours across northern England, perhaps southern Scotland, with lighter winds here in the centre of low pressure, but gusts of wind towards some Channel Coast could get as high as perhaps 45 to 50 miles an hour, and temperatures won't get much past the mid-teens. So not the most pleasant day of weather, but it's looking better on Sunday. Fewer showers, mostly towards the northwest. It's drier further south and east, and there will be more in the way of sunshine. Check the forecast for your area on BBC Weather app.
In a world where media is evolving faster than ever before,
where stories are shared in bite-sized portions,
influencers change minds,
and news arrives in an instant.
We hear from media insiders on their perspective on the world
and uncover the stories behind the latest trends. Join us for The Media Show. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
This programme asks plain questions with the help of the unrivaled range of BBC journalists right across the world and gathered here in this building. I'll also draw on my frontline experience that helps me know who to talk to and who to listen to, meaning our analysis is unbiased with absolutely no spin. That's why we call our programme Unspun World.
Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Donald Trump's second term has brought sweeping changes both at home and on the international stage.
They charge us, we charge them.
Join our teams for the latest developments and reaction. See the headlines as they happen with breaking news alerts on the News app. And get in-depth coverage on bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.
This is BBC News. We'll have the headlines for you at the top of the hour, which is straight after this programme.
For decades, the Iranian regime has been carrying out targeted attacks against critics of the regime living abroad. One of the most high-profile targets is President Trump. 5 years ago, after Trump ordered an airstrike that killed Iran's most powerful military commander, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, promised revenge.
A successful attack by the Iranian government within the United States against any individual could be perceived as an act of war.
In the midst of the 2024 presidential election, the U.S. accused Iran of attempting to assassinate Trump, a charge Iran denied.
You do any attacks on former presidents or candidates for president, your country gets blown to smithereens.
Iranian journalists and dissidents around the world have increasingly found themselves in the crosshairs of the Iranian regime.
هر کدومتون که یک روز هم کار رسانه‌ای علیه این نظام کرده باشین همتون خواهین خورد.
They wanted to attach a bomb into my car.
Criminal proxies are being used to carry out the abductions and assassinations.
We believe these plots come from the organizations which are part of the Iranian state apparatus.
I've been following the plots across Turkey, Britain, and North America. And one name keeps coming up again and again. An organized crime boss who court documents reveal has been doing the dirty work for the Iranian regime. His name, Naji Sharifi Zindashti.
تهمت مردم حالا من به خیال کن تجارت دیدن یعنی ترور اینا کن جنبه سیاسی اینا کن.
This is the story of a chilling connection between Iranian security forces and international criminal networks. A story of murder for hire.
Horizontal camera
Stand by. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sound is okay? For 2 decades, I've reported conflicts in the Middle East, investigating assassinations and corruption tied to the Islamic Republic of Iran. But 2 years ago, it came right to my doorstep. Over the last few years, I and many Iranian journalists have been subjected to online harassment and threats from the Iranian security forces. Sima Sabed is a former host of a talk show on Iran International, a Farsi TV station that broadcasts into Iran. She and her former colleagues were targeted for assassination, first by a car bomb and then a knife attack. But the people smuggler who was commissioned to do the hit turned double agent.
They wanted to attach a bomb into my car, and later, based on the information that they gathered around my home, they realized that, I come with my car out of a secure car park. So he was instructed to go and target me in the corridors, in the lift, or somewhere inside the building, to follow me and just stab me. It was Unit 840 of the Quds Force, and he was giving the order to a person who was a Syrian commander, and he was the one who was a double agent. So that's how I am alive now, because he went to the security services and informed them.
Western sanctions have targeted Iranian security forces, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that reports to Iran's supreme leader. It's Quds Force, an elite unit of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, responsible for conducting covert operations outside Iran's border, and it's Unit 840 that's responsible, among other things, for planning and establishing terror infrastructure. Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Iranian diplomats have also been sanctioned for their role in murder and abduction plots. The Islamic Republic of Iran has imprisoned many journalists and restricted their activities simply for doing their jobs. Like many others, I left the country and continue to cover Iran from here in the UK. But I never thought one day I have to watch my back on the streets of London. This wave of violent plots orchestrated by the Iranian security forces has raised serious concerns within UK counter-terrorism agencies. The UK Domestic Security Service, MI5, has reported 20 credible plots against Iranian nationals in the UK since 2022.
We're determined to protect those individuals. We're determined to protect free and fair broadcasting and journalism from the UK. And we are going after hard those individuals who either think they can project that from places like Iran, or they think that they can simply enter into a contract with organised or low-level criminals to do that dirty work for them.
But I've been following evidence that shows the plots reach far wider. In 2017, Said Karimian was assassinated on the streets of Istanbul. He ran a series of TV channels, Gem TV, that aired Western movies and series to Iran. In the eyes of Islamic regime, the programs were against Islamic values. At the time, I was the BBC correspondent there.
Well, our correspondent Gia Gold joins us now from Istanbul.
Some other people on social media, they say there was a lot of murky businesses. It might be actually some sort of business feud or gangs-related issue. But what we know definitely, Iranian regime wasn't happy with the kind of program he was showing it.
Just 2 years later, Masoud Moulavi Vardanjani, a former member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards who had defected, was assassinated in Istanbul. He'd been publishing details of corruption at the highest level in the Iranian leadership on his Telegram account called Black Box. An Iranian diplomat on his way to Tehran was arrested in Istanbul airport in connection with the plot, but was later released after he claimed diplomatic immunity. I got hold of this copy of the Turkish court document and the investigation around the assassination of Said Karimian in Istanbul. There is a suspect name here, Naji Sharifi Zindashti. I've heard that name before, but in connection with drug trafficking, not political assassination. Temur Soykan is one of Turkey's leading investigative journalists and has exposed crime and corruption at the highest levels.
Karimian'ın öldürüldüğü gün ise aracının önü beyaz bir otomobil tarafından kesildi ve çarşaf giymiş 2 kişi tarafından uzun namlulu silahlarla ateş açıldı. O sırada yine güvenlik kameraları incelendiğinde Karimian'ın öldürülmesinden hemen önce oradan Zindaşti'nin şoförünün bulunduğu aracın geçtiği tespit edildi. Yani buradan da savcılar şu sonuca vardılar. Hem cinayetin keşif çalışmalarını yaptı Zindaşti'nin şoförü, hem de cinayet anında hedefi tetikçilere gösterdi. Hatta daha sonra Karimian öldükten sonra bu şoförün Zindaşti'nin yanına gittiği, Zindaşti'nin kullandığı bir telefonla irtibat kurduğu tespit edildi. Bunun üzerine Zindaşti Karimian cinayetinde bir numaralı sanık oldu.
A year later, Zindashti was arrested in connection with the killing. He was held for 6 months, but was then released. In October 2020, another dissident was targeted. Habib Chab was lured from Sweden to Turkey and abducted. The Iranian regime accused Chap of plotting attacks against Iranian security forces. He was smuggled back to Iran, where a confession was extracted. After a show trial, he was convicted and executed. Again, someone related to Zindashti was arrested in Turkey in connection with the kidnapping. This time, his nephew. So, who is this man, Naji Sharifi Zindashti? He was known to be a notorious drug trafficker in Turkey. But is there more to him?
Zindashti çok güçlü bir adam, güçlü bir ilişkileri var istihbaratçılarla, devletle.
Turkey is one of the meeting points for drug routes from the east and criminal gangs supplying drugs to Europe and the west. Zindashti grew up in the border area of Iran that has seen drugs trafficked for decades. Someone who knows his history and whose identity we are concealing for his own safety says in 1996, while he was still a young man, drug running is what brought him to the attention of the authorities in Iran. He is portrayed here by an actor.
Naji was arrested for drug smuggling and sentenced to death. But rumors later surfaced that he killed the prison guard and had escaped from Tehran prison. Now we finally understand the true reason behind his release. If someone is sentenced to death and kills a prison guard and escapes, there is no doubt that he will be executed by Iranian Islamic laws. So, the only plausible way for him to return and live freely would be if he'd been working for Iran's intelligence services.
Vardanjani cinayetinde ise tetikçinin yine bu şoförün kardeşi olan ve Zindashti'nin çalışanı gözüken, bahçıvan olarak onun kadrolu çalışanı görünen kişi olduğu, yani onun adamı olduğu tespit edildi. Çünkü Zindashti 2 cinayetle suçlanıyordu. Örneğin Keremiyan ve Vardanjani, ama bununla sınırlı değildi.
Zindashti, who the US authorities say is an asset of the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, is the prime suspect in each of the plots against the Iranian dissidents in Turkey. In 2017, for the murder of Said Keremiyan. In 2019, for the murder of Masoud Molavi Vardanjani. And in 2020, the abduction of Habib Chab. Turkey has charged Iranian diplomats and people linked to Zindashti for their roles in the plots.
Ben orada bir tür hani İran devletinin ya da İran istihbarat aygıtının eline bir koz verdiğini ve artık mecbur kaldığını düşünüyorum Zindashti'nin.
If you look at Naji's social media, you will see he's a strong supporter of the regime. He's been meeting with tribal leaders, securing their loyalty to the regime. This is all part of Iran's intelligence operation.
Orada da Zindashti reddediyor bu iddiaları. İran gizli servisiyle ilişkisi olduğuna yönelik iddiaları reddediyor ama rejim muhaliflerinin yok edilmesinde ya da ortadan kaldırılmasında, kaçırılmasında, İran'ın hoşlanmadığı insanların yok edilmesinde hep bir şekilde Zindashti ve adamlarının izi gözüküyor. Ve bu da açıklanmaya muhtaç bir durum. Bu ilk defa değil aslında ama hep organize suçla istihbarat örgütleri arasında bir bağ vardı.
Yani Zindashti sadece Keremiyan, Vardanjani ve Habib Chap'ın uyuşturucu kaçakçılığı, başka farklı cinayetler vardı dosyanın içinde. Ona rağmen bu çok ağır suçlamalara ve büyük dosyaya rağmen 6 ay içerisinde serbest bırakılması çok büyük bir hukuki skandaldı. Bu da hatta hepimizi şoke etti.
Some breaking news now from 11 News investigates involving a murder-for-hire plot, a member of the Hells Angels, and the Iranian government.
The U.S. Department of Justice and FBI have indicted several people for plotting to assassinate 2 Maryland residents.
A year later, Naji Zindashti was implicated in yet another plot. This time, more than 5,000 miles away, just outside the U.S. Capitol in Maryland.
The feds charged 1 Iranian and 2 Canadian nationals for plotting the murders of 2 Maryland residents, one of whom had defected from Iran, according to court documents.
It has been few months. I've been investigating Naji Sharifi Zindashti's action in Turkey, in Iran, and possibly linked to UK. I have come to Washington, D.C., here, the seat of power. I really hope to be able to talk to U.S. officials, current and former officials in intelligence community, just to find out who was the target in Maryland.
We have seen that the IRGC and Quds Force are a part of Iran's efforts to undertake both lethal plots to kidnap and also to harass dissidents and other perceived opponents. I think there is a growing body of evidence, and some of this evidence is now public following the January indictment and the sanctions that we imposed on Zindashti and his co-conspirators about this plot. And I think what we've seen is, this is one example of the Iranian regime's efforts to use transnational plotting to coordinate with organized criminal groups in order to target its perceived opponents.
In December 2023, this document was filed in the District of Minnesota against Hells Angels members. What is interesting here, the prosecutor refers to the target as victim number 1 who had defected from Iran. It is very clear whoever this person was must have been a member of Iranian establishment. That's why they were so angry. They came after this person. This document also transcribes an online chat on how to kill victim number 1. And Zindashti has been communicating with this criminal group. He says it must be overkill. Eventually, they agree on $370,000 US. And Zindashti said, you have to make a show, make an example of him. We gotta erase his head from his torso. Zindashti, who the US authorities say is an asset of the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, was caught agreeing to pay this money in an online chat. At the sharp end of this assassination plot were 2 criminals who were members of the same Hells Angels biker gang.
We have seen evidence of this kind of coordination between Iranian government officials and criminal organizations, whether it's drug traffickers, organizations such as the Hells Angels. And I think some of this evidence is now public, as we've seen through the publication of the indictment against Zindashti and his network.
10 years ago, some U.S. media claimed General Ali Reza Asghari, a former deputy defense minister of Iran, had defected to the United States and was living under CIA protection. Was he the target in Maryland? General Asghari was one of the founders of Lebanese Hezbollah. He held key insights about Iran's nuclear activities and Hezbollah. Zindashti may have been assigned to kill Asghari, someone who the regime believed had betrayed its secrets.
The official U.S. position is that we do not know his location, and you should believe that.
In Israeli intelligence communities, they told us actually most likely Ali Reza Asghari was already working with Western intelligence agency.
I am the one U.S. official that would know everything about this. But the official line is all I'm going to say.
In this indictment, the FBI names 4 members of Iranian intelligence service for orchestrating a kidnapping plot in New York. The target was Masih Alinejad, a female Iranian activist. But none of these individuals have been arrested.
So a couple of years ago, 4 Iranian agents were actually charged in absentia with trying to kidnap you.
Can you believe that? First of all, they're scared of women. When they came after me here, my job was just giving voice to voiceless women inside Iran. Western feminists who
First, they
actually
sent
went to my
someone
country,
here to kidnap her.
wore hijab.
And the plot was so crazy that I got multiple phone calls from journalists saying this can't be true. This is kooky. Because they were going to grab her here in New York. They were going to put her on a small boat to a fishing boat. The fishing boat was going to go down to Venezuela. They were going to take her in Venezuela, put her on an airplane to Tehran, show trial, and then one could only assume kill her. When it was publicly exposed, that did not dissuade them from trying again. And this time, they sent an Azeri Shia to the front step of her home, literally to her doorstep. And she happened to have one of those doorbell cameras. And so the guy with his iPhone taking footage of her front porch without realizing that he's being recorded himself, which is why we have this footage. And he gets arrested right around the corner from her house with an AR-15 and ammunition in his car. That's how brazen the Iranians are in terms of the pursuit of these external operations.
If it was not the FBI stopping the kidnapping plot, I would have been in Iran now executed. The FBI actually arrested a man with a loaded gun in front of my house in Brooklyn.
Just like in the Maryland case, the hitmen carrying out these plots weren't Iranian at all. They were hired hands. Turkish international criminal gang from the former Soviet Union, known as the Thieves-in-Law. But the threat leads back to 4 Iranian intelligence officers, 5 members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and a member of the elite Quds Force. You mentioned there have been credible threats. Why we only had 1 prosecution? We didn't have more prosecution.
There are occasions when we can work over a period to gather evidence to bring about a prosecution, or occasions when the evidence for that prosecution is really there in the hands of people. And in the case of somebody who has the images, we're able to build a case of why those images might have been useful for terrorist purposes. On other occasions, frankly, we just need to get the person at risk to a place of safety.
In January 2024, the UK government sanctioned Zindashti, 2 members of his gang convicted in relation to plots in Turkey, 2 Iranian diplomats, and Unit 840 of the elite Quds Force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards.
The IRGC and Iranian intelligence turned a blind eye, or permitted him to traffic drugs domestically and internationally. In exchange, he aids them to the targeted abductions and killings of Iranian dissidents abroad.
I managed to track down a rare interview that Zindashti had done with a journalist from Iran, who asked him about his involvement in the plots and attacks.
یا سعید کریمیان روژا یه وقت تا ترور کرن 4,000 یه منو شوفرم دشنه وی کنسروی اوات کشتن پولیس پیشن که چون شوفری تا ور بیا هر شوله بلکه رد گیری اگه یا مسعود ملویدن چه مقام مدیده چنینه و چه دادگاه چنینه یعنی تنه مد گایده هیا پولیس دا دادگاه عالی مسعود مهلوی دا هلا چتش تهمت مدم حالا من بخیاد کن چه شرطا نگه نهاده امنیتی ایرانی نگه میتا ترکاوانه ملکه چه نبونه تکلی چه نبونه اما گل یه عشایری گل یه منطقه گل پایگاه منطقه همون یک دنافس کنته این چنچی یارمتی شبیه دکن یعنی
A campaign against Iranian dissidents and journalists is one thing, but an FBI investigation has linked Iran to even more high-profile targets.
In other news, the FBI says it thwarted a murder-for-hire plan targeting President-elect Donald Trump. So the Justice Department today disclosed criminal charges, revealing that Iranian government official directed a contact here in the United States to kill Donald Trump before the election.
General Qasem Soleimani, the commander of IRGC elite Quds Force, was killed in 2020 under orders of President Trump. The IRGC commanders vow to avenge his death. Since then, the FBI has foiled suspected IRGC attempts to kill President Trump and former members of his administration who were involved in the decision. The Iranian regime has rejected the allegations.
The Iranian government has refuted that officially, and I once again refute that. We don't send people to assassinate people. I think that's a campaign ploy.
But Donald Trump's return to the White House could spell trouble for Tehran's leadership.
As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. With these actions, we will begin.
Over the last 2 years, intelligence services, both in the US and Europe, say lethal operations against critics of the regime have accelerated. Meanwhile, the alleged kingpin behind many of these plots, Naji Zindashti, remains a wanted man.
Live from London, this is BBC News. A war of words. Donald Trump and Elon Musk engage in an increasingly bitter feud on social media. In Scotland, a narrow win for Labour in the Hamilton by-election, beating the SNP and Reform UK. Tokyo, we have a problem. Contact is lost with an unmanned Japanese spacecraft trying to land on the moon. And look no hands. The BBC is given a ride in one of China's new driverless lorries.
So here we are, we're racing down the freeway, and I've got to say it's pretty weird because you look over, there's the driver, his hands are off the steering wheel.
Hello and welcome to BBC News. I'm Lukwesa Burak. The bromance between President Trump and Elon Musk is well and truly over. Just a week after the world's richest man stepped back from his role as advisor to the world's most powerful man. The pair are involved in an increasingly bitter feud on social media. It began when Elon Musk called a key piece of Mr. Trump's legislation, his tax and spending bill, an abomination, and appealed to lawmakers to kill it. On Thursday, President Trump said he was very disappointed by the comments. In response, Mr. Musk launched a series of extraordinary attacks on the X platform. Here's our North America editor, Sarah Smith.
Give it to Elon as a presentation from our country. Thank you, Elon.
A golden key to the White House was Elon Musk's leaving present. Now, less than a week later, Donald Trump might want to think about changing the locks.
Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because...
The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz was the Oval Office guest star, but Elon Musk and his criticism of Mr. Trump's spending bill dominated the conversation, to the president's obvious irritation.
But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem.
Just minutes later, Elon Musk replied on X, saying, "False. This bill was never shown to me even once and was passed in the dead of night, so fast almost no one in Congress could even read it."
Where is he? Come on up here, Elon.
Mr. Musk obviously adored being in the spotlight as he campaigned alongside Donald Trump. Today, he's claiming that without him and the more than $250 million he donated, the president would have lost the election. They were once seen together everywhere. Now their row is being conducted in plain sight, on social media. Mr. Trump on Truth Social upped the ante with, "Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do, and he just went crazy." Musk called that an obvious lie, and then really escalated the abuse, suggesting Donald Trump has withheld files related to Jeffrey Epstein, who was arrested on charges of sex trafficking and died by suicide in jail, because he's named in them. Mr. Musk tweeted, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they've not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT." Mr. Musk and his chainsaw were brought into government to aggressively cut government spending. A pointless exercise, he thinks, if President Trump will blow all the savings on tax cuts in his spending bill.
You know, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
Which is that one?
Donald Trump is now suggesting the easiest way to save money would be to terminate Elon Musk's billions of dollars in government contracts and subsidies. It was probably inevitable this bromance would turn sour, but no one expected it to go this bad, this fast. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
OK, let's speak to our North America correspondent, Jake Kwan, who's in Washington for us. And Jake, first off, I mean, people watching this and who've been following this saga over the last few hours, so just sitting there gasping, what's the reaction been like in America?
I mean, in Washington, I think we all had our collective jaws just drop to the floor, and watching these two most powerful men in the world exchanging these very personal insult at each other for the hours. Each took themselves to social media. Donald Trump to Truth Social and Elon Musk to X. And posting every minute a new insult, and as if the situation wasn't spectacular enough, we heard Elon Musk calling for impeachment of President Trump and that he be replaced by his Vice President J.D. Vance. And if you can imagine, just 6 days ago, President Trump was handing Elon Musk a golden key to the White House, and Elon Musk leaving the government and then turn around and accusing his former boss of a grave crime and calling for him to be fired. I mean, you can imagine just the reaction, the stupefying, the how gobsmacked we all were.
A lot of these insults have been personal and professional integrity also questioned. But ultimately, what's at stake for the American people, Jake?
I think there was a moment earlier, although Mr. Elon Musk had kind of walked it back a little bit, he threatened to decommission the Dragon spacecraft, which is really the only American spacecraft that can ferry astronauts over to the orbit, into the International Space Station, and bring them back. Now, he said this in response to President Trump saying that he will cancel the federal contracts that they have with companies like SpaceX. And imagine if Elon Musk had gone through with that, you would be essentially leaving these people stranded in a space station. And I think this kind of symbolizes all these, collateral damage that could have been done to American people, done to American businesses as well. If the contracts were canceled, what would happen to these companies? I mean, it would definitely hurt Elon's bottom line, but it would hurt the workers and the people who are working at his companies as well. And then we're also talking about the grant and subsidies to the electric vehicles and the attempt to transition American economy to a new kind of green climate future. So a lot of things were at the stake other than just these two men who were battling it out.
Jake Kwan, thank you very much indeed, and we'll see what happens over the next few hours. Okay, for more on the fallout, let's speak to the political advisor and strategist, Rina Shah. Hello to you, Rina. There's nothing like two huge egos scorned, is there? What went wrong?
Well, let's put it this way. This is a big fight with even bigger stakes. When Trump and Musk start throwing punches, it's not just a billionaires brawl. It's trouble for Trump's team. And with Musk having dropped $300 million to help Trump win the election in 2024 and also lead the Department of Government Efficiency crew, which cut red tape, or so they said they would, I think what we're seeing now play out is something that is a total mess. But it isn't just a drama. It shows that Trump's coalition is shaky. And if these two can't get along, how is President Trump going to push his trade or tech plans? I mean, that's a big question there. Globally, what this makes the United States look like, it makes us look like we're stumbling when we need really steady leadership at the helm.
So do you think, Rina, that this will give an opening to those Republicans who privately don't agree with President Trump and have held reservations as to what to do with his big, beautiful bill, and also thinking ahead to the future of the party and, of course, more pressingly, the midterms?
Well, I think we should zoom out. The Republicans ought to remember, because of course our midterm elections are coming, and the real influence of money in our elections is always talked about. But this is where it becomes a bit dicey, because Republicans in Congress need Elon Musk's money. So they don't want to really tee him off in such a way in which he doesn't come help their potentially difficult challenges for re-election. But like I said, there's a takeaway here. And the takeaway really is that billionaires running the show can backfire. You know, Musk went from being Trump's quote unquote quote unquote first buddy to being his loudest critic in a matter of weeks. And that's just a really wild ride. I mean, we saw Elon Musk slash something like 121,000 federal jobs with the Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, which was a big deal. But then quickly he trashed Trump's tax bill, and he threw out some wild Epstein claims today on social media. So again, this is a reminder that letting billionaires like Elon Musk steer the ship can be a gamble. They can bring big ideas, but when they clash, it's chaos. And other countries are watching here, wondering if their leaders will lean on really rich friends.
Rina, very quickly, I wonder if I could just jump in very quickly. You know the saying, give somebody enough rope. The Democrats have been quiet here. What is this telling us about their strategy?
Well, Democrats have been wondering, of course, whether they should sort of court Elon Musk and try to bring him over to their side in a moment of political opportunism, of course. But I think everybody here in Washington tonight has been very rattled by this, because this fight is already shaking global markets. I cannot overstate the importance of that. You know, this Trump and Musk spat isn't just talk. It hits wallets really hard. Tesla's stock tanked something like 15% almost today, which wiped out $150 billion. And that's, again, because Trump is threatening to cut Musk's subsidies over this feud. So I think investors worldwide are spooked, especially with Trump pushing huge tariffs and China trade talk. And if it looks like the United States is run by grudges and not by plans, what that does is makes global markets very jittery. So this is a real wake-up call here. Personal beefs at the top can mess with everyone's money.
Rina Shah, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So, whilst the public feud between President Trump and Elon Musk reached boiling point, the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, was forced to sit and watch on in awkward silence as he was in the Oval Office next to Donald Trump on his inaugural visit to Washington. The two leaders did, though, find time to discuss the war in Ukraine, with Chancellor Merz telling the president that Germany was on Ukraine's side. Mr. Trump, for his part, compared the conflict to two children fighting in the park. Let's bring in Jeff Rathke, who is the president of the American-German Institute at Johns Hopkins University. Jeff, lovely to have you with us. All in all, what's the reading of how this meeting went?
Well, you described awkward silence, but I think for Friedrich Merz, that was a whole lot better than being in the crosshairs. The first visit for him, which came just about 1 month into his term as chancellor, was pretty successful in establishing a positive working relationship with the American president. And I think that positive interpretation is what has dominated since the meeting yesterday.
And was he putting much at threat in terms of trying to secure this positive relationship? And obviously also economically, Mr. Merz had, some work to do whilst he was there by mentioning that pressure had to be put on Russia.
Well, there's any kind of risk in a high-stakes meeting like this, but for Germany, as for the rest of Europe, the fate of the war in Ukraine is not an abstract matter. It's one that is driving threat perceptions and indeed defense spending across Europe. So I think the concerted effort to remind President Trump that Russia is the aggressor, that the United States is uniquely positioned to force Russia to the table, was quite well thought out, and it seems coordinated also quite well with his European partners.
Yeah, let's just talk about the European partners, because obviously trade tariffs are a key issue for Germany, but Mr. Merz doesn't have the authority to negotiate those tariffs. That's down to the EU. But how badly does Germany need to sort things out?
Well, certainly the existing tariffs and also the threatened rise in tariffs after what is now a July 9th deadline is extremely important for Germany. It is one of the most export-dependent and open economies in the world, and indeed the largest economy in Europe. So, we're talking about billions in revenues for German companies, and for American taxpayers if they have to start paying higher tariffs on imports. There wasn't a lot said about that in the open part of the meeting, but from what Merz said after the White House visit to the German press, that this is something that they focused on in their luncheon discussion in some detail. And without conveying any breakthrough, Merz did say that Germany was going to be taking a more prominent role on trade issues within Europe as they looked to find a way to resolve the current situation.
Jeff Rathke, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Sure.
A major Russian air assault on Ukraine has left 4 people dead and 20 injured overnight. In strikes on the capital, Kyiv, the city's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, has said that 16 people have been hospitalized. Within the past couple of hours, Labour has won the by-election for the Scottish Parliament, beating both the SNP and Reform UK to win the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse seat. Many analysts had predicted a 2-horse race between the parties, but the Scottish Labour candidate, Davy Russell, won by just over 600 votes from the SNP. This was the declaration of that vote.
Davy Russell, Scottish Labour Party, 8,559. Mark Wilkinson, Independent, 109. There were 46 ballots rejected, and I declare that Davy Russell is elected to serve in the Scottish Parliament as the member for the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse.
Well, during his victory speech, Labour's newest MSP sent a message to Nigel Farage and Reform UK.
Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse has voted tonight to take a new direction with Scottish Labour. Like the people here in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse, and right across Scotland, we all feel we've been let down by the SNP. They've broken our NHS, wasted our money, and after nearly 2 decades, they don't deserve another chance. This community has also sent a message to Farage and his mob tonight. The poison of reform isn't us, it isn't Scotland, and we don't want your division here.
Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended his policy of providing support for an armed group in Gaza, which he says is opposed to Hamas. He said it had saved the lives of Israeli soldiers. Media reports say the administration has supplied weapons to a Palestinian group based in Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. The Abu Shabab clan claims to provide security for aid convoys, but has been accused of looting them. 2 aid distribution sites operated by the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation resumed following deadly shootings near its facilities. Our Middle East editor, Sebastian Usher, has more on the aid situation in the territory.
The aid situation in Gaza remains dire, but there's been a glimmer of better news, perhaps, in that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is this new mechanism that's been backed by Israel and the US, the aim from their perspective to try to avoid Hamas taking the aid so that it can get directly to the Palestinians. This had run into huge problems. 3 days in which Palestinians queuing up in the early hours of the morning had been killed, had been wounded in large numbers. Eyewitnesses, multiple eyewitnesses saying that this was from gunfire from Israeli troops. Denials, mostly from the Israeli army, on most of those counts, although it did concede that on Tuesday morning troops did open fire and what they said were suspects diverging from the main route and posing a threat. For a day, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation closed its operations. No sites were open to deliver aid to Palestinians. The aim was to try and ensure that the security would be better, that the delivery of aid would be more efficient. This afternoon, 2 of those sites reopened. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says that around 1.5 million individual meals were given to Palestinians who came to the site. Around 27 truckloads delivered that aid. The big question now is, will this new foundation be able to develop more sites across Gaza to meet the needs, the huge needs that there are across the whole of the Strip, that just 4 sites is clear it can't meet? Will other ways in which aid is being brought in, around 100 trucks come in for a different mechanism each day. They come to warehouses, but there have been big problems with those as well, with looting, with violence. The Labour Union of truck drivers in Gaza essentially said that they couldn't work under those conditions. So there are very, very big problems still about aid in Gaza, where the people, after 11 weeks of an Israeli blockade, are in desperate need of any supplies that they can get. UN aid agencies, UN officials are saying that even this amount of aid, if it is up and running, if it isn't marred by the sort of violence that we've seen, isn't anywhere near enough what's necessary.
The Japanese company iSpace has lost contact with its unmanned Resilience spacecraft as it was attempting to land on the moon. The robotic lander would have been the first from a non-US company to achieve a controlled moon landing 2 years after its first attempt failed. But mission controllers have not been able to re-establish contact. An iSpace executive said that they'll learn from the experience. Let's speak to Leroy Choi, a former NASA astronaut and commander of the International Space Station. So, Chow, welcome to the programme. First off, what do we know about what went wrong this time?
Well, unfortunately, it sounds a lot like what happened the first time they were approaching the surface of the moon, and then, the mission control team reported that they observed the lander falling at a fairly high rate towards the surface just before they lost contact. So that pretty strongly suggests that it did crash onto the surface of the moon, very much like the first time. In the case of the first time, some of their sensors got confused and thought it was closer to the surface than it was. There was an issue with perhaps some low fuel, but at any rate, they'll have to analyze all their data to see what went wrong this time. Presumably, of course, they learned from their first experience, and it's really a shame if that happened, because this was an exciting mission with a pretty ambitious schedule, and unfortunately, it looks like it's not going to work out.
So you mentioned there the fact that the hard landing, we think, was caused by the fact that Resilience was travelling too fast. How difficult is it, or what are the challenges in controlling spacecraft from space, from Earth rather?
Sure, anything you do in space is going to be challenging for sure. So far, there have been many attempts to land on the moon, and a lot of them had ended in failure. The 2 U.S. companies have successfully landed on the moon. Intuitive Machines, to a degree, succeeded, but in both cases, their landers toppled over shortly after landing. One company, Firefly Aerospace, a few months ago, successfully landed their first lander on the surface of the moon. Their mission was a complete success, so that was great news, and it would have been wonderful to see iSpace complete their mission. Like I said, they had an ambitious schedule. They were carrying a small rover with them, which was going to traverse a part of the surface and use a scoop to actually take a sample of the regolith, or the dirt, if you will, on the surface. Unfortunately, all that appears to have been lost.
Yeah, that was the European Space Agency rover, I believe. I mean, there are a lot of agents or agencies involved in missions like this. Can they continue to afford them? Because this must cost millions and millions of pounds or euros.
Well, sure, it is expensive. These companies, they do have NASA contracts in general, most of them do, to help develop this commercial capability of landing payloads on the moon. The idea is to put spacecraft down and rovers to characterize the surface and prepare it for when we send humans there, with the goal, of course, of eventually building a lunar base. And so, this will continue because the NASA Eclipse programs, as it's called, involves several different commercial companies, and so it will continue.
Leroy, can I just jump in very quickly? Yeah. Why the moon? What's the big deal with the moon? I presume there's money to be made out of this as well.
Well, the moon is, of course, we've gone to the moon before. We have probes that go to the moon, but there are some, important resources there that we might be able to utilize. And of course, there's interest in exploring the moon with humans in preparation for sending a human mission to Mars, right? And of course, we've been exploring Mars for a number of years with rovers, all those government programs. And so this is
Leroy. Leroy,
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. We've run out of time, unfortunately. Leroy Chow there.
Hello there. It stays very unsettled weather-wise for the rest of this week. So showers, longer spells of rain at times, windy too for some, and temperatures are below the seasonal average. Friday, a day of sunny spells and some scattered showers. It's drier and brighter across the southern half of the UK than it was on Thursday. Still some rain to start the morning, mostly across northern England. That sweeps its way eastwards, a good scattering of showers developing behind most of the showers across the northern half of the UK, although there could be some lines of showers forming towards the south coast as well, but generally drier and a bit brighter here. Some of the showers heavy and thundery across northeast Scotland. Temperatures a little below the average, 14 to 19 degrees. Now, on Saturday, there is an area of low pressure sweeping eastwards, bringing unusually strong winds for the time of year, particularly towards Channel Coast, where we could be looking at coastal gales perhaps. There'll be some heavy thundery showers too, working their way further eastwards throughout the day. There could be some very heavy, slow-moving downpours across northern England, perhaps southern Scotland, with lighter winds here in the centre of low pressure, but gusts of wind towards some Channel coasts could get as high as perhaps 45 to 50 miles an hour, and temperatures won't get much past the mid-teens. So not the most pleasant day of weather, but it's looking better on Sunday. Fewer showers, mostly towards the northwest. It's drier further south and east, and there will be more in the way of sunshine. Check the forecast for your area on the BBC Weather app.
Get the BBC News app for breaking news live as it happens. Personalise the app to get your news your way. From local stories to global headlines, stay up to date with the news that matters. BBC News. Download the app.
This is frontier country.
Broaden your horizons.
If this is what being a 21st century nomad is all about, sign me up.
Caribbean's relationship with the seas are changing and deepen your understanding.
What must it have been like for them, not knowing whether they were going to make it?
How important is this region?
If something starts changing here, we see the change all over the world.
This is just incredible. The Travel Show. Watch on BBC iPlayer.